So our first customer actually came from Digium, and this is where the idea of the product actually came from. We had a big customer at Digium that called Digium and said, we want to do long distance. And Digium said, we don't know what that is, we don't know what that means, we don't play in that space, sorry. And I kind of got permission to field that myself. And they said, here's what's happening. We have this phone system, we have this toll-free number that people call that we buy from AT&T. And all these people call this number, and then it gets routed to us over the internet. And just like you would have a Skype conversation, voice over IP, routed to us over the internet, and then our call center in Atlanta that handles all these calls, everything that gets distributed to all the right people with the Digium software, everybody's happy. However, we're paying AT&T like 3 cents a minute, and so our phone bill is like $22,000 a month. It's really expensive. And I said, that sucks, basically. So I called another company that I knew that was in the long distance space, which was Verizon. And I just said, hey, how much do you guys charge per minute for toll-free numbers? And they were like, who the hell are you? And I'm like, we're a long distance provider and we want to purchase your services. And there was about 10 calls like that where I basically got hung up on. Lucky for me though, these companies are so massive that when you call back, you usually don't get the same person. So I kept calling, and every time I called, I would learn more and more information about their product. Someone would say, oh, you guys can't do this because you're not an FCC licensed carrier. I was like, the first one is, what's your 499 fire alarm ID? That's what we have to get going. And I'm like, click. How to get a 499 fire alarm ID in Google. So we signed up, $130, called back. My 499 file ID is 471384. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, what's your average call duration? Click. Hey guys, what's your average call duration in the call center? 5 minutes. Oh, awesome. Yeah, it's 5 minutes. And they're like, oh, okay. We think we can get something to you. Where's your points of presence? And I'm like, what is a point of presence? It's like where you have servers co-located that can accept these voice calls. And I'm like, Huntsville and Atlanta. Like, oh, you have 2 points of presence? And I'm like, yes. So eventually I was able to piece all those pieces of the puzzle together. And then they said, okay, we can give you long distance for 2 cents a minute for 800 incoming. I said, 2 cents? These guys are paying 3 cents. This is awesome. So I call the customer, yeah, we can give you a rate of 2.99 cents. And they're like, well, that's not enough for us to move over. I'm like, 2.95 cents. And they're like, that's only going to save us $500 a month. So I'm like, oh crap, you're right. So I'm like, okay, if they're spending 18,000, basic math. And I remember this, right? Because I was like 18 years old, and I was like Googling how to figure out the percentage of the difference between 3 cents and 2 cents. And again, this was just me, and I was like, okay, 3 cents and 2 cents. That's okay. How about 2.5 cents? They're like, that's awesome. That would save us, that's a good percentage discount. That would save us, 20% or whatever it was on our monthly bill. We can move over as soon as possible. I'm like, oh, okay. When can I have this up and running? They're like, well, you got to go through our interrupt process. I'm like, what is an interrupt process, right? And so people, I think, don't value, I say they get stuck in what's called the paralysis of analysis, where they'll sit there and try to figure out, they'll talk to the customer, or they won't talk to the customer actually. They'll see the use case of long distance and maybe making some money there in what I call arbitrage, buying low, selling high. And they will say, okay, I'm going to try to buy a book. And then after that book comes in 3 weeks, I'm going to, because I didn't order from Amazon, I'm going to read that book, and then I'm going to write a business plan. And then after I write a business plan, I'm going to work on my website. And after I work on my website, obviously I got to get an office space with a nice nameplate and a nice phone. And then after that, obviously I got to get a suit because I got to look professional. People didn't realize this, but we hit our $1 million mark in revenue with only meeting one of our customers. We had like 50 at the time. We didn't meet anybody. I mean, we worked in my boxers basically every day in my basement. The perception of what is required to start a company is very different from the reality of the actual demand. So just to give that kind of long-winded answer, the way we started long distance was someone said, I went to them and said, what's your biggest bill in telecom? They said, long distance by far. We pay them 10 times as much as we pay Digium. The whole company ended up being that relationship with Verizon. We aggregated amongst a lot of people, and we figured out a really good way with least cost routing, which was, pretty new at the time, which is where, okay, when we're sending a call, Verizon says to call Chris costs this much money, costs 3 cents. But level 3 says it costs 2 cents. So we're going to send the call to level 3, but we're still going to charge our customer 5 cents or whatever it may be. So we're just in this kind of arbitrage space, which now is really popular. I'm glad I don't have the company now, because we'd be dead, because the whole business was over. But I wasn't thinking about that. I wasn't thinking about what's the macro of long distance as an industry, and is it in decline? Yeah, it's in decline. But we made a hell of a lot of money on the way down,